Hart stepped out of her car, the cold wind biting at her cheeks, carrying the scent of early morning dew and diesel from the nearby training vehicles. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light over the sprawling Tactical Response Academy complex. The facility looked imposing: high walls, watchtowers, obstacle courses, and a line of jeeps and trucks ready to rumble across the training grounds. Tightened the strap of her duffel bag over her shoulder and exhaled slowly. This was it. The first day of the program that would determine whether she belonged in a world dominated by men, strength, and sheer grit. From the moment she stepped onto the pavement, whispers followed her. Some trainees snickered behind her back. A few openly rolled their eyes when she lifted her duffel bag effortlessly, carrying it like it weighed nothing. Instructors glanced her way with a faint smirk, as if they already knew she would stumble, falter, or break under pressure. "She's cute, but that's about it," one of the men whispered to his friend. Another laughed under his breath, shaking his head. The assumptions were clear. Hart didn't belong here. Felt their eyes on her but refused to let them intimidate her. She had trained herself to be invisible, to let actions speak louder than words, and to transform doubt into fuel. From the outside, she may have seemed quiet and reserved, but inside her mind was sharp, calculating, and ready. She wasn't here to make friends or to win popularity. She was here to master every skill, prove her worth, and outlast every sneer. The morning briefing began in a large hall with high ceilings, fluorescent lights, and walls lined with photos of past graduates, mostly men who now served in elite tactical units. Took a seat at the back, quietly observing everyone around her. Some trainees flexed their muscles and exchanged exaggerated handshakes. Others whispered strategies, sharing tips and secrets from previous years. Stayed silent, letting her presence go unnoticed. She watched, memorized patterns, and studied behaviors. Every laugh, every subtle gesture of condescension, only sharpened her awareness. "Welcome, recruits," the head instructor said, his voice booming across the hall. "You're here because you've shown potential, but potential means nothing without discipline, precision, and courage. Some of you will thrive, some of you will fail, and some of you will leave us wishing you had tried harder." His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on. She met his eyes with a calm steadiness that made him shift uncomfortably. It was subtle, but it was enough to hint that she wasn't just another trainee he could dismiss. The day progressed with introductions, minor drills, and physical assessments. His first challenge was a standard obstacle course, a warm-up designed to test endurance, agility, and speed. She approached the course carefully, calculating her every move. Yet despite her preparation, the stares and laughter of others threw her off for the first few moments. A classmate shouted, "Watch her fall on the first wall." Others chuckled as she hesitated slightly at the rope climb. Didn't respond. She took a deep breath, ignored the noise, and focused entirely on her body, her footing, her rhythm. By the end of the course, had finished slightly slower than the top male trainees, but she had completed it flawlessly. No slips, no injuries, no visible struggle. Some of the men clapped mockingly as if to say, "Finally, she did something right." Others whispered about how she looked fragile, how she shouldn't even attempt more advanced courses. Noted every comment. She didn't argue, she didn't protest. All she did was make a mental note, understanding that the judgments of others could become her greatest advantage. During lunch, sat alone under a tree, taking small bites of her sandwich while observing her peers. She noticed patterns in their conversations, the hierarchy forming through informal jokes and status claims. Many of them underestimated her simply because she didn't engage in boasting or loud displays of toughness. In their eyes, silence equaled weakness. Little did they know, silence often meant strategy, calculation, and patience, qualities that would soon give her an edge they couldn't predict. By mid-afternoon, the academy introduced its first combat drill, hand-to-hand techniques combined with obstacle navigation, partnered with a male trainee who had openly mocked her that morning. "Try not to embarrass yourself," he said with a smirk. His face remained neutral. Inside, however, her mind raced, recalling months of practice, every maneuver her mother had taught her, every lesson learned from years of defending herself in the streets of her neighborhood. As the drill began, she moved with precision and calm, countering his attacks efficiently, maintaining balance and anticipating his movements. Each step, each block, each strike was calculated. The mocking trainee stumbled repeatedly, his surprise evident. Didn't gloat. She simply executed flawlessly, leaving him off balance and the observers impressed. Later, as the day drew to a close, trainees were assigned to write reflections on their performance. Entry was simple. Focus is more important than strength. Patience outweighs arrogance. Today was the first test. Tomorrow, I prepare for the next. She left the hall quietly, noticing that some of her peers exchanged puzzled glances. They couldn't understand how she maintained composure amidst ridicule, how she absorbed criticism without letting it break her spirit. For it wasn't about proving them wrong immediately. It was about preparation, patience, and waiting for the right moment to demonstrate what she was truly capable of. The sun set over the academy grounds as returned to her quarters. She unpacked her minimal belongings, organized her equipment meticulously, and went through her notes once more. While others might have gone out to socialize or rest, she spent the evening in study and practice, running simulations in her mind, perfecting movements and visualizing challenges. Every laugh, every doubt cast her way became fuel. She was building something far greater than strength or skill. She was building inevitability. The inevitability of her proving them all wrong. As she lay down that night, her mind replayed the day, the laughter, the smirks, the underestimation. She allowed herself a small smile. They thought she was weak, fragile, and unworthy of the academy. But what they didn't see was the storm quietly brewing within her, a storm forged from years of discipline, patience, and the unwavering lessons from her mother. Tomorrow, the real challenges would begin, and Hart would meet them head-on, calm, focused, and ready to turn every doubt into astonishment. By the time she drifted into sleep, the academy's shadows seemed to shift, almost imperceptibly. Unseen, quiet but resolute, Hart had already begun rewriting the story they thought they knew. She wasn't here to fit in. She wasn't here to ask for permission. She was here to show that underestimation was dangerous, and she would wield it like a weapon, patiently, silently, and with unmatched precision. Hart often thought of her mother in moments of quiet determination, moments when she faced doubt, ridicule, or exhaustion. Her mother, Hart, had been a formidable police officer, known in her precinct for her unwavering courage, unshakable composure, and brilliant tactical mind. She had raised alone, instilling in her a code of discipline and resilience that had become the foundation of her daughter's existence. Her early years were far from easy, but taught her that strength wasn't always measured in brute force. Sometimes it was measured in patience, calculation, and the ability to endure when others faltered. Childhood had been punctuated by lessons in survival. Their neighborhood wasn't dangerous in the traditional sense, but it had its rough edges: bullying kids on the street, fights that escalated too quickly, and unpredictable situations where quick thinking could make the difference between pain and safety. Often took along on patrols or training exercises, not as a child but as a student. "You're going to learn to read the world," her mother would say. "Not every threat announces itself. You have to see it before it sees you." Those words became compass. By the age of 10, could anticipate conflict in ways most adults struggled with. She could read tension in a glance, detect subtle changes in body language, and move before a threat fully materialized. Bullies learned quickly that she was not an easy target, yet she never sought fights. Her mother's lessons were clear. Strength was about control, not chaos. Every skirmish, every confrontation was a classroom, teaching her patience, timing, and strategy. These early lessons, often overlooked by peers and instructors later at the academy, had laid the groundwork for something extraordinary. Also instilled in the importance of mental toughness, she emphasized that fear and doubt were tools, not enemies. "Most people let fear control them," said, kneeling beside during late-night training sessions. "The moment they're afraid, they react before they think. You're going to think first. You're going to act deliberately. That's how winners are made." Absorbed these words like a shield, carrying them into every situation that tested her resilience. When laughter or mockery followed her at the academy, she drew strength from this internalized armor. Beyond the tactical and physical lessons taught about subtle observation, the kind that could turn underestimation into advantage, she would walk through crowded streets, pointing out people's mannerisms, predicting actions, and explaining how to use assumptions to one's benefit. "People always underestimate women in danger zones," said. "They assume we're weak. They assume we're incapable. You're going to use that. Their doubt will be your weapon." Never forgot that lesson. Every time someone laughed at her at the academy, every time a classmate made a dismissive remark, she mentally filed it away as raw material for her eventual success. School wasn't any easier than the streets. Many of her classmates ignored her achievements or openly mocked her attempts at excellence in sports, academics, or leadership. Yet she refused to participate in the cycle of ridicule. Instead, she focused on mastery of skills, knowledge, and herself. While others sought approval, cultivated competence. Every moment of derision, every underestimated ability became motivation. By her teenage years, she had developed an almost instinctual understanding of how to turn skepticism into fuel, channeling it into precision, focus, and action. Its influence extended to discipline in training and physical conditioning. Every day followed routines that combined strength, agility, and endurance. Her workouts were silent, often solitary in the early hours before sunrise. She ran distances that left lungs burning, performed drills that tested reflexes, and practiced combat techniques long after the other children had gone home. It wasn't about proving herself to anyone but her mother. But the benefits were undeniable. His body responded with speed, power, and control that belied her age and size. Her mother's insistence on balance, mind, body, and instinct would later define as a tactical force to be reckoned with. One of the most formative experiences came when she was 13. A group of older boys cornered her in a local park, thinking they could intimidate her. Most children would have panicked. Most adults would have been caught off guard. Remained calm. Her mother had drilled into her countless scenarios: observe first, act second. She assessed their positions, anticipated their actions, and executed evasive maneuvers she had practiced in secret for years. When the boys lunged, she countered with precision, breaking free without injury to herself. It wasn't brute violence. It was strategic action born of discipline, observation, and patience. From that day on, understood that preparation trumped panic, and anticipation outweighed aggression. High school introduced new challenges. While some students dismissed her capabilities, a few recognized her discipline and began to admire her skills quietly. Yet never sought admiration. She remained focused on her path. She joined self-defense programs, martial arts clubs, and leadership courses, absorbing knowledge from every instructor. Teachers praised her focus, while peers either mocked or avoided her. Every setback became a lesson in resilience. By now, had internalized her mother's philosophy fully. It wasn't about proving others wrong in the moment. It was about being ready when the opportunity arose to demonstrate true capability. Her relationship with her mother deepened through these years. Late at night would quiz her on tactics, strategies, and scenario planning. They'd reenact situations that might occur at the academy: threats, ambushes, and sudden challenges. Learn to anticipate outcomes, make split-second decisions, and remain emotionally detached under pressure. Instruction wasn't easy. It was relentless, challenging, and sometimes brutal, but embraced it. Every mistake was corrected, every hesitation analyzed. By the time she applied to the Tactical Response Academy, she wasn't just prepared physically. She had cultivated an intuition that would allow her to move faster, react smarter, and outthink her competition. Even socially, her upbringing shaped her approach to underestimation. She learned to let people believe what they wanted about her capabilities. She smiled politely, nodded during jokes, and maintained a calm exterior while secretly cataloging every slight, every doubt, and every misjudgment. Her silence became a cloak of invisibility, concealing her true potential. In her mind, each person who doubted her became a stepping stone toward her eventual success. Where others saw ridicule, saw opportunity. As she arrived at the academy, all these lessons converged. The whispers, smirks, and laughter of her peers weren't obstacles. They were tools. Every doubt cast her way, every underestimation, would be a tactical advantage when the moment came to demonstrate her abilities. Hart wasn't simply physically prepared. She carried a lifetime of experience, discipline, and strategic thinking that most of her classmates couldn't begin to comprehend. The foundation of her strength wasn't just muscle or speed. It was decades of careful observation, preparation, and the unwavering belief instilled by her mother. By the end of that second day at the academy, her resolve was unshakable. While the others focused on appearances, social hierarchy, and boasting, she quietly refined her skills, studied tactics, and prepared mentally for the challenges ahead. The laughter, the sneers, the doubt, they all fueled her, just as her mother had taught. In the shadows of underestimation, Hart had already begun to grow into something unstoppable. And when the moment came, she would show the academy what she had been silently building all her life: precision, power, and a mind that moved faster than anyone could anticipate. The morning sun burned through the tall windows of the Tactical Response Academy as Hart laced up her boots for another day of training. Today promised to be tougher than yesterday. The instructors had warned the recruits that the upcoming sessions would separate the strong from the weak, the prepared from the unprepared. Stomach tightened with a mixture of anticipation and calm focus. She had endured mockery and doubt yesterday, but she knew that preparation and patience, not anger or pride, would win the day. As she stepped onto the training grounds, whispers followed her once again. A group of male trainees huddled nearby, smirking, their voices dripping with derision. "Bet she won't last 5 minutes on the agility course," one said. Another added, "She's lucky they don't weigh her down with a balloon. She's all talk." The instructors merely glanced in its direction, a faint, unreadable expression on their faces, making no effort to intervene. The atmosphere was thick with expectation, not of her success, but of her failure. The first challenge of the day was a timed obstacle course, designed to test endurance, agility, balance, and speed. Wooden walls, rope climbs, monkey bars, and low crawls formed a grueling sequence. Had studied the layout last night, visualizing every motion, every landing, every grip. She had trained her body for countless hours to execute precisely these movements, but the mental pressure was heavier than any physical challenge she had faced. Every glance from her peers, every smirk and whispered joke, was a test of her composure. Her first attempt was rough. The rope climb took slightly longer than she anticipated. She stumbled momentarily over the monkey bars and the sneers grew louder. One trainee laughed openly as she landed, almost tripping over a small hurdle. Felt the familiar sting of humiliation, a familiar heat in her chest. But unlike some of the others who would have reacted defensively or stormed off, she exhaled slowly, shook off the embarrassment, and prepared for the second attempt. She reminded herself of her mother's lessons: patience, observation, and focus. Pride was irrelevant, the goal was mastery. By the second run, everything began to click. Adjusted her grip, found her rhythm, and moved fluidly through the obstacles. Each step was precise. Each motion was deliberate. Where others had stumbled, she flowed. By the time she crossed the finish line, she had completed the course with flawless form, even if her time wasn't the fastest. Some peers whispered among themselves, a mix of confusion and surprise coloring their words. The smirks had faded, replaced by cautious curiosity. Even the instructors raised their eyebrows subtly, nodding her disciplined execution. For, however, it was just another step, a quiet victory. Next came hand-to-hand combat drills. Trainees were paired randomly and was assigned to a man twice her size who had spent the morning mocking her. "Don't hurt yourself trying to keep up," he sneered. The expression remained unreadable, her eyes locked on him with calm intensity. She had spent years practicing defensive and offensive techniques, learning how to use her opponent's momentum against them. The mockery did not anger her, it fueled her focus. This was her moment to apply what she had internalized from a lifetime of discipline and preparation. The instructor blew the whistle and the drill began. Moved like water, shifting her weight, redirecting force and striking only when necessary. The larger trainee lunged aggressively, expecting to overpower her with sheer size. Instead, applied a counter and leveraged his momentum to bring him to the ground. The room went silent for a moment, broken only by the sound of bodies landing and the instructor's whistle. The mocking trainee scrambled to his feet, stunned. His calm composure contrasted sharply with his flustered frustration. She had done nothing flashy, nothing theatrical. Yet the lesson was clear. Strength alone meant nothing without control and precision. The humiliation escalated during group drills, was deliberately paired with the most boastful and overconfident trainees. They pushed, shouted, and mocked, aiming to expose any weakness, yet adapted. She moved strategically, anticipating attacks and minimizing mistakes. Each time someone tried to dominate her, she countered quietly and efficiently, her actions leaving observers quietly impressed. The laughter that followed her earlier attempts now softened, replaced by whispered acknowledgments of skill. The contrast between expectation and reality became palpable. The woman everyone had laughed at was proving herself in ways they hadn't predicted. Even the instructors seemed to take notice. A mid-level trainer pulled her aside during a break. "You're not like the others," he said, his tone a mixture of caution and respect. "Keep this up. Control, not speed, is your advantage. Don't let them push you into mistakes." Nodded, absorbing the advice. It was rare to receive direct guidance in the academy, and she treated it as another lesson. Everything she had endured, ridicule, doubt, and minor setbacks, had prepared her for this. Her mind was clear, her body ready, and her strategy developing with each passing drill. Afternoon sessions focused on endurance and teamwork. Trainees were tasked with carrying heavy loads, navigating challenging terrain, and coordinating movements with partners. Aware that some peers might underestimate her physical capacity, moved with deliberate confidence. She lifted, ran, and adjusted her posture seamlessly. When a teammate expressed doubt about her stamina, she responded not with words but with results steady, relentless, and precise. By the end of the day, many were beginning to their assumptions. His presence had shifted from an object of ridicule to a quiet, undeniable force. By the final drill of the day, was exhausted physically but sharper mentally than ever. The instructors organized a simulation where trainees had to navigate a series of obstacles while responding to unpredictable threats. Approached with calm focus, anticipating each challenge, staying aware of her surroundings, and executing flawlessly. As she completed the final maneuver, a faint murmur of awe ran through the crowd. The same people who had mocked her all morning now watched with disbelief, recognizing a level of competence they hadn't expected. When the day concluded, retreated to a quiet corner reflecting on the events. She hadn't sought validation or praise, but she acknowledged her own progress. Every insult, every doubt cast her way had been transformed into learning, adaptation, and preparation. She understood that the academy was not just testing physical ability. It was testing resilience, patience, and the ability to perform under social pressure. Had passed these tests quietly, with a strategy that no one else fully comprehended. The laughter that had once surrounded her had lost its power. As the sun set over the academy grounds, casting long shadows across the training fields, knew that the real challenge was still ahead. The mockery, the sneers, and the dismissive comments were merely the prelude to the ultimate tests that would determine not just her skill, but her potential to exceed every expectation. She packed her gear meticulously, reviewed her notes, and mentally replayed every lesson from the day. Her preparation was becoming instinctive, her resolve unshakable. And in the quiet of her room, Hart allowed herself a brief, satisfied smile. They had laughed at her, yes, but every laugh was now a stepping stone toward something far greater. Knew with complete certainty that the academy had underestimated her. Every underestimation, every dismissal would become an advantage. She would endure, adapt, and ultimately dominate, not through arrogance or flash, but through precision, patience, and relentless preparation. By the time the next day began, She would be ready to demonstrate a level of skill and composure that no one had anticipated. The woman everyone laughed at was quietly transforming into the person they would never forget. The morning air at the Tactical Response Academy was unusually tense that day, carrying the weight of anticipation and silent competition. Hart approached the training grounds with her usual calm composure, yet beneath it, a spark of focused determination burned bright. Today was not just another routine day of drills or endurance exercises. It was the day the instructors announced a new test, one that would push every trainee to their absolute limits. Whispers had already begun circulating among the students, rumors about the so-called 30-second elimination run. The instructors gathered the recruits in the central training hall, their expressions unreadable, their posture commanding respect. "Today," the head instructor began, voice firm and unwavering, "you will face the 30-second elimination run. 12 moving targets, randomized positions, and complete unpredictability. Most trainees will barely clear half of them. Some will fail entirely. This test will reveal your precision, your focus, and your ability to perform under extreme pressure. It is not for the faint-hearted." Murmurs rippled through the room. Peers exchanged looks of excitement, fear, and for some, smug confidence. Many had already predicted who would succeed and who would fail. Hart, the quiet woman who had just begun to earn attention through measured skill, was a frequent topic of derision. "She won't survive 10 seconds, one man whispered to his friend. Another added, "Hope they don't have to carry her out after she embarrasses herself." Their laughter was low but deliberate, meant to sting. Ignored it, her face composed, her mind already calculating, analyzing, and preparing. The briefing continued with meticulous details about the test. Each trainee would enter a dimly lit simulation room, facing 12 moving targets. They would have 30 seconds to eliminate all targets using simulated weapons and precise tactical maneuvers. Targets were not stationary. They would move unpredictably, sometimes in coordination, sometimes independently. Sound traps and limited visibility added to the difficulty. Every angle, every step, every decision mattered. The instructors stressed that hesitation, overthinking, or panic would result in failure. Only the most disciplined and focused individuals could succeed. Listened carefully, absorbing every word. Her mind raced not with fear but with anticipation. Each detail was a puzzle piece she could study, internalize, and master. She could feel the weight of expectation, both from the instructors and, more importantly, from the peers who doubted her. Every smirk, every whispered comment from the morning echoed in her mind. They didn't know her strength. They didn't know her preparation. They didn't know the years of training, observation, and discipline that had brought her to this moment. When the instructors finished, the trainees were led to a holding area outside the simulation room. Here, nerves and excitement mingled. Trainees shared strategies, checked equipment, and psyched themselves up for the challenge ahead. Remained quiet, seated in the corner, her gaze steady on the floor. Some classmates whispered again, underestimating her presence. "She's probably imagining she can beat us," one trainee scoffed. Another chuckled, didn't flinch. Every word, every glance reinforced the strategy she had cultivated over years of preparation. Observation first, action second. When her name was finally called, Rose calmly. The air seemed heavier as she walked toward the simulation room. The onlookers, those who had doubted, mocked, or dismissed her, leaned forward, eager to witness her anticipated failure. She felt their stares, the tension, the expectation of humiliation, and she used it. Every underestimated glance became a tool, a source of silent motivation. Her heart remained steady, her breath controlled, her mind completely focused on the task ahead. She entered the dimly lit room, the rotating red lights casting sharp shadows across the walls. The 12 targets slid into position, mechanical yet unpredictable in their movements. The room's silence was almost deafening, punctuated only by the hum of machinery and the faint beeping of timers. Took a deep breath, grounding herself in the rhythm of the simulation. In her mind, she visualized every motion, the angles of approach, the timing of each shot, the quickest path through the room. This wasn't improvisation. It was calculation, honed to perfection. For a moment everything paused. Even the observers seemed to hold their breath. This was the calm before the storm. Body tensed, ready to react, yet her mind remained clear. She remembered her mother's words, "Control your fear. Let it work for you, not against you." She visualized the course, the positions of the targets, and the precise movements required to neutralize them efficiently. Years of discipline, observation, and practice converged into a single, focused point. She was ready. Then the buzzer sounded. Instantly sprang into action. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. The first target fell with fluid precision. The second, equally quick. Observers who had anticipated her failure went silent, their disbelief growing as she maintained perfect rhythm. She pivoted, ducked, and shifted her weight, following a mental map she had rehearsed countless times. Each target was eliminated in sequence, yet she remained calm, never overextending, never hesitating. By the halfway mark, even the most confident trainees began whispering among themselves, astonished at what they were witnessing. Had already cleared more targets than anyone expected, and she had done so with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the panic displayed by others. Her body moved instinctively, her mind anticipating the unpredictable movements of the remaining targets. Every calculated step reinforced the truth she had carried her entire life. Skill, preparation, and composure outweighed arrogance and size. As the final targets approached, focus intensified. She rolled, pivoted, and struck with precision, neutralizing each target in succession. 30 seconds passed in a blur, 12 targets down, complete elimination achieved. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. The observers, instructors, and trainees stared, unable to process what they had just seen. Hart, the woman everyone had underestimated, had accomplished the impossible. When she removed her gear and stepped out of the room, she didn't celebrate. She didn't boast. Her face remained calm, composed, and unreadable. The laughter and sneers that had followed her all morning were gone, replaced by stunned awe. Some instructors nodded quietly, recognizing her precision and control. Peers who had mocked her now approached with hesitation, admiration, and disbelief. Had demonstrated not just skill, but the power of patience, preparation, and resilience. That evening, as she reflected on the day, understood that the 30-second elimination run was more than a test of physical ability. It was a measure of mental toughness, discipline, and composure under pressure. She had been underestimated at every turn, and she had turned that underestimation into her greatest advantage. The academy, her peers, and even the instructors had witnessed only a glimpse of her potential. The real journey had just begun, and Hart was more determined than ever to rise above every expectation. As the sun set over the academy, painting the grounds in shades of gold and crimson, walked quietly to her quarters. Every lesson from her past, every street fight, every practice session, every word of wisdom from her mother had culminated in this moment. And though the world may not have fully understood it yet, knew one undeniable truth: she was ready for anything. And when the true challenges came, no one, not even those who laughed at her, would stand in her way. The simulation room was dark, almost oppressively so. Only faint red lights rotated slowly across the walls, casting long, shifting shadows. Hart stood at the entrance, her boots planted firmly on the cold floor, shoulders squared and eyes scanning the environment. The air was thick with anticipation, almost tangible, as if it held the collective breath of the observers outside. Every pair of eyes in the observation gallery was fixed on her, waiting for the moment they expected her to falter. They did not know, could not know, that this silence was not weakness. It was the calm before the storm. The 30-second elimination run was notorious for breaking even the most skilled trainees. 12 moving targets, unpredictable patterns, limited visibility, and strict time constraints. Most recruits froze, overthinking their approach, panicking at the slightest hesitation, or letting adrenaline override precision. However, had trained her mind as thoroughly as her body. Years of discipline, observation, and meticulous preparation had conditioned her to respond to pressure with clarity rather than chaos. While others might crumble in the face of expectation, she thrived under it. Outside, whispers and murmurs rippled through the onlookers. The very people who had laughed at her earlier that morning now leaned forward, curious and skeptical. Could she possibly succeed? Some of the instructors exchanged glances, their faces unreadable, though subtle nods betrayed the beginnings of recognition. Peers shifted uneasily, sensing the tension in the air. They had underestimated her all day, and now, with the simulation room sealed and the timer poised to start, they were about to witness something they had not anticipated. Closed her eyes for a brief moment. She drew in a slow, controlled breath, centering herself. In her mind, she visualized the room, the positions of the targets, the optimal paths between them, the precise timing required to neutralize each one. Her mother's words echoed clearly, "Control your fear. Let it work for you, not against you." Fear was not absent, but it was harnessed, transformed into focus. His heartbeat slowed, syncing with the rhythm of her breathing, her mind mapping every potential movement of the targets as if choreographing a dance. The instructors began their countdown. 3, 2, 1. A low, metallic buzzer echoed through the room. For a fleeting moment, all motion stopped, as if the world itself held its breath, then moved. She advanced with deliberate steps, pivoting and adjusting her stance, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to release. The first target appeared, sliding into view with mechanical precision. Hands reacted instinctively. Her shot was clean, her motion fluid. The target was neutralized. Observers exhaled softly in surprise. She had begun faster than anyone anticipated, yet her movements were controlled, deliberate, and precise. The second and third targets followed almost immediately. Eyes scanned continuously, tracking movements and recalculating angles in real time. The red light swept across her face, illuminating determination and focus. Her body moved in perfect coordination, a combination of strength, speed, and mental clarity. Every previous insult, every doubting glance, every whispered comment from her peers became fuel, transforming tension into a driving force that sharpened her actions rather than hindering them. Inside the observation gallery, murmurs grew into gasps. The trainees who had mocked her earlier began exchanging stunned looks. One whispered, How is she doing that?" Another simply shook his head in disbelief. Even instructors, typically reserved in their reactions, leaned forward slightly, tracking every motion with keen interest. Was demonstrating not just skill, but mastery over fear, expectation, and pressure, qualities that could not be taught overnight but were forged over years of careful preparation and discipline. By the halfway point, had eliminated 6 of the 12 targets. Each motion was calculated yet fluid, instinctive yet precise. She pivoted around obstacles with grace, maintained perfect balance while adjusting to shifting positions, and anticipated target movements with uncanny accuracy. Time compressed around her. 30 seconds felt like an eternity and an instant all at once. The silence within the simulation room amplified her focus. Outside, the observer, disbelief grew with each passing second. His mind operated on multiple levels simultaneously. She monitored each target, predicted trajectories, adjusted posture, and planned subsequent moves while keeping her body taut and ready. Her training had taught her to anticipate, not react blindly. Every muscle, every reflex, every calculation worked in harmony. Mistakes were impossible because preparation had eliminated them. Where others might hesitate or second-guess, acted decisively. Where others might panic, she thrived. As the 10th target appeared, observers began to murmur in disbelief. A trainee whispered, "She might actually do it, all 12 in 30 seconds." Ignored the sound, focusing solely on the task. Her hands moved with surgical precision, her feet pivoted effortlessly, and her eyes tracked every moving element. The room was a ballet of motion and calculation, choreographed in real time by the instincts honed over years of relentless training. Each successful elimination reinforced her confidence. Each precise movement was a silent declaration that she had long surpassed underestimation. By the 25th second mark, only 2 targets remained. movements intensified, yet remained smooth and controlled. She rolled, pivoted, and executed transitions with perfect timing. Observers could barely comprehend the speed and precision she displayed. Whispers turned to audible gasps. Some instructors began nodding subtly, recognition and admiration evident in their expressions. Hart, the trainee who had been laughed at, was demonstrating a level of skill, focus, and composure that few could achieve even after years of training. Finally, with only seconds remaining, she neutralized the last two targets. 30 seconds had passed. 12 targets lay eliminated. The room was silent for a heartbeat, and then a wave of astonishment swept through the observers. The trainees who had doubted her stared in disbelief. The instructors exchanged glances, acknowledging the performance with a mixture of pride and awe. However, remained composed, removing her equipment and standing tall. There was no celebration, no dramatics, only quiet, unshakable confidence. She had done exactly what she had trained to do, with calm precision and relentless focus. As she stepped out of the simulation room, felt the weight of the moment. The laughter, the mockery, and the underestimation that had followed her all day had been silenced. Observers approached, some hesitantly, others with awe. Instructors offered subtle nods of approval. Her peers, once dismissive, now regarded her with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Hart had not merely completed the challenge. She had transformed the expectations of everyone around her. They had expected failure. Instead, they had witnessed mastery. That evening reflected on the day's events quietly in her quarters. The silence before the storm had been the most critical moment. It had allowed her to focus, to prepare mentally, and to turn anticipation into advantage. Every year of preparation, every lesson from her mother, every previous challenge she had faced, had converged into this single, flawless performance. The academy had underestimated her. But Hart had turned that underestimation into a victory, one calculated step at a time. And in her mind, the real journey was only beginning. The countdown had ended, and the buzzer's shrill note echoed like the starting gun of a race that would define every expectation ever placed on Hart. In that split second before movement, time seemed to stretch, thick with tension and anticipation. Her body tensed, poised like a coiled spring, every muscle ready, every thought focused with surgical precision. The air in the simulation room was heavy, the rotating red lights casting jagged shadows across the 12 targets that now appeared, mechanical yet chaotic in their motion. As the first second ticked away, moved. Her boots barely made a sound on the cold floor. She advanced with a deliberate grace, positioning herself to minimize exposure while maximizing efficiency. The first target moved into her line of sight, a split-second pivot required to neutralize it. Her hands reacted instinctively. The shot was clean, precise, and executed without hesitation. The first target fell. A faint gasp rippled from the observation gallery, the kind that betrayed astonishment. This was only the beginning. The second target appeared almost immediately, sliding unpredictably behind a small obstacle. Adjusted her stance without pause, her mind calculating angles, distances, and trajectories in real time. She eliminated the second target with the same fluid precision as the first. Her body flowed seamlessly, pivoting, rolling, and repositioning for the next threat. Observers who had expected hesitation or panic stared in disbelief. The silence was thick, broken only by the mechanical sounds of moving targets and the rhythmic sweep of red lights. By the fifth second had neutralized 4 targets. Her movements were a symphony of speed and control, each step measured, each action intentional. There was no wasted motion. Every pivot, roll, and shot had been trained, rehearsed, and mastered long before the buzzer sounded. What made extraordinary was not raw speed alone but the integration of mind and body, her ability to anticipate, react, and execute without a single hesitation. Where others might panic, she thrived. At the halfway mark, 6 targets had fallen. The observers' disbelief grew with each successive elimination. A few trainees muttered in astonishment. "She's unreal," one whispered. Another, voice tinged with awe, said, "How is she doing that?" Even the instructors leaned slightly forward, subtle nods of recognition betraying their respect. They had witnessed many competent trainees, but few had displayed the combination of precision, calm, and anticipation that exhibited. Her performance was not just impressive, it was transformative, forcing everyone to reconsider every assumption they had made about her abilities. Every motion was deliberate yet instinctive. When a seventh target moved unpredictably, pivoted, rolled, and neutralized it in a fraction of a second, her body responded to each change in the environment as if anticipating it. She maintained a rhythm, a fluidity that seemed almost choreographed, yet entirely real-time. She had become a master of space, timing, and mental focus. The more observers tried to predict her next move, the less they could, and the more impossible her performance appeared. By the 22nd second had eliminated 10 targets. Only 2 remained, moving rapidly in opposite directions. Many had already expected her to falter, anticipating hesitation, misjudgment, or panic. Yet's composure never wavered. Her eyes scanned both threats simultaneously, processing angles, timing, and approach in an instant. Every decision had already been visualized, rehearsed in the countless drills that had preceded this moment. Her hands moved with lethal precision, her body flowing between positions effortlessly, as if time itself had slowed in her favor. The final 2 targets appeared simultaneously, moving unpredictably in opposite corners, pivoted, rolled, and struck one with calculated accuracy. Without hesitation, she adjusted her stance, maintained balance, and neutralized the final target with a fluid shot. 12 targets eliminated, 30 seconds complete. Silence filled the simulation room, heavy, profound, and almost sacred. Stood in the center, calm, composed, and completely in control, as if nothing extraordinary had just occurred. Outside, the reaction was immediate. Observers erupted in astonishment. Trainees who had mocked her all morning stared with wide eyes, some unable to speak. Instructors exchanged nods, a rare mixture of pride and awe evident in their expressions. The performance had shattered every expectation. Hart, the woman laughed at, underestimated, and doubted, had executed what many considered impossible. Precision, focus, and calm had triumphed over ridicule and doubt in 30 seconds of flawless execution. Even her peers, those who had whispered, sneered, and doubted, now approached with cautious respect. Some struggled to meet her eyes, unsure whether to congratulate, question, or simply stand in stunned silence. His expression remained neutral, her face unreadable. She didn't boast, didn't raise her voice, and didn't perform for effect. Her victory was quiet, precise, and undeniable. The lesson was clear: underestimate her at your own peril. Later, as the room emptied and the mechanical targets were reset, the instructors reviewed the results. Name was at the top of her performance unmatched in the Academy's history. The head instructor paused, studying the data, then nodded to a junior trainer. "This one," he said, voice low, "is something special. She's not just skilled, she's exceptional. Her focus, control, and execution are off the charts." Standing quietly to the side, simply nodded in acknowledgement. Recognition was not her goal, mastery was. In the following days, news of her performance spread throughout the Academy. Trainees who had doubted her began to adjust their perception, while instructors took note of her calm under extreme pressure. Her reputation had shifted overnight. She was no longer the underestimated recruit. She had become a symbol of precision, composure, and disciplined skill. Yet she carried no pride, no arrogance. Every success was simply another step, another challenge to prepare for, another opportunity to apply her lifelong lessons. As evening fell, reflected quietly in her quarters. 30 seconds had changed everything, not merely a demonstration of skill, but a testament to preparation, focus, and patience. She thought of her mother's words: "They'll always underestimate you. Use it." Every mockery, every doubt, every dismissive glance had become fuel, channeled into 30 seconds of perfection. And though the performance had earned recognition, knew it was only the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead, and she would meet them with the same precision, calm, and determination that had defined her legendary 30 seconds. By the time she finally rested that night, his mind replayed every movement, every shot, every pivot. The performance had been flawless, yet she dissected it with critical attention, finding room for improvement, for adjustment, for even greater precision. She understood that mastery was not static. It was a process, a continuous refinement of skill, mind, and body. In her quiet reflection, she smiled subtly, knowing that the laughter and doubt that had followed her at the academy had become the very tools that forged her triumph. Hart had not just completed the 30-second elimination run. She had rewritten the rules of expectation. She had transformed ridicule into recognition, doubt into validation, and anticipation into triumph. And though the academy had witnessed only the surface of her capability, knew her true potential was far greater, waiting patiently, quietly, for the next challenge to arrive. The moment Hart stepped out of the simulation room, the atmosphere in the academy had shifted irrevocably. The stunned silence of her peers, the rare nods of respect from instructors, and the barely contained murmurs of astonishment mingled into an energy that felt almost electric. Those who had laughed at her, mocked her, or doubted her mere presence were now forced to confront a reality they hadn't anticipated. Hart had just accomplished something extraordinary. Some trainees approached hesitantly, their faces a mix of admiration, disbelief, and guilt. I didn't think," one of them stammered, trailing off as he struggled to find the right words. Another simply shook his head, muttering, "That was insane." Met their eyes briefly but remained composed. There was no gloating, no flourish of ego. Her victory had been silent, deliberate, and undeniable, the kind that left observers in awe without her needing to say a word. The instructors, too, were visibly impressed. Head trainer walked slowly toward her, his expression unreadable at first, then breaking into a subtle smile of approval. "Hart," he said, voice steady but carrying weight, "what you just did is unprecedented in this academy. Your timing, control, and focus were flawless. You didn't just complete the challenge, you mastered it." Nodded calmly, absorbing the acknowledgement but offering no outward reaction. Praise was secondary. Mastery and preparation were her true measures of success. Word spread quickly. By the afternoon, whispers about her legendary 30-second performance had reached every corner of the academy. Trainees who had once disregarded her or assumed she would fail now regarded her with a combination of awe and caution. Some sought to approach her, hoping to learn her techniques or simply understand the discipline behind her composure. Others avoided her, intimidated by her presence and the silent proof of her exceptional skill. The social dynamics of the academy had shifted overnight, and its quiet demeanor only amplified the impact of her achievement. Despite the admiration, not all responses were positive. A few of the more competitive trainees, humiliated by comparison, attempted to undermine her success through subtle taunts and backhanded comments. "It was luck," one sneered to a group of peers. "She probably won't do it twice." Another whispered, "Maybe she got lucky with the timing." Paid no attention. She had learned long ago that criticism, doubt, and envy were inevitable when one surpassed expectations. She focused on her own preparation, understanding that external opinions were irrelevant to her performance. Mastery, after all, was proven by action, not chatter. The instructors, however, saw something far more significant than mere skill. During debriefings and evaluations, they dissected every movement had made, analyzing her posture, timing, and decision-making under pressure. The findings were clear. Her performance demonstrated an extraordinary integration of mind and body, the result of years of disciplined training, mental conditioning, and strategic observation. One instructor, an expert in tactical operations, remarked, "She didn't just react, she anticipated. That's the difference between a competent trainee and a true operator." The words, though understated, resonated with gravity, had achieved a level few could hope to reach in a lifetime. Even among her peers, perceptions began to change rapidly. Trainees who had mocked her in the past now approached with tentative respect, asking for advice or guidance. A few sought to train alongside her, hoping to observe her technique and perhaps glean insights from her discipline. Offered measured advice, demonstrating techniques where appropriate but never seeking attention or accolades. Her focus remained on continuous improvement, understanding that one achievement, no matter how impressive, was merely a step on a much longer journey. Outside the academy walls, rumors began to spread. Trainers who had been present during her performance recounted the story to colleagues, describing a young woman who had executed 12 precise eliminations in 30 seconds with unparalleled composure. While some listeners dismissed it as exaggeration, others recognized it as a testament to exceptional talent and preparation. Hart was no longer just a trainee. She was becoming a legend, her story quietly building momentum in whispers, discussions, and impressed nods. In the quiet of her quarters that evening reflected on the day. She replayed every movement, every pivot, every shot, and every calculated step. Though her performance had been flawless, she analyzed it critically, identifying areas for refinement and improvement. Excellence, she understood, was not static. Even perfection could be refined, and the pursuit of mastery was continuous. Her mind was as disciplined as her body, cataloging lessons, evaluating strategies, and preparing for the inevitable challenges ahead. As she sat in quiet reflection, thought of her mother. Hart's words echoed in her mind. "They'll always underestimate you. Use it." Indeed, the mockery and doubt she had endured had been transformed into fuel for success. Every sneer, every whispered insult had been converted into focus, precision, and action. Her mother's lessons, learned over a lifetime of preparation and experience, had become the foundation upon which her victory was built. Smiled subtly, not in pride, but in quiet acknowledgement of the journey that had brought her to this moment. The following days reinforced the impact of her performance. Training sessions carried a new intensity, not only because of the exercises themselves, but because every trainee now understood the benchmark she had set. Approached each challenge with the same calm composure, her focus unshakable. Instructors continued to monitor her closely, recognizing that her abilities extended beyond mere physical skill. Her mental acuity, discipline, and adaptability were equally formidable. The academy itself began to acknowledge that Hart was not just a trainee, but a paradigm shift in expectations and standards. Socially, the dynamics had changed. Trainees who had previously sought to dominate her through ridicule or intimidation now deferred subtly, offering respect through cautious interaction. Some tried to befriend her, seeking insight or approval, remained courteous but distant, understanding the importance of maintaining focus and control. Her reputation as a skilled, disciplined, and unstoppable force spread quietly yet undeniably. Where once laughter had greeted her presence, now there was admiration, curiosity, and, in some cases, a hint of fear. Even within the instructor's circle, discussions about its potential grew. Some suggested special training programs to further develop her abilities, recognizing that she possessed a rare combination of mental resilience, tactical skill, and composure under extreme pressure. Others debated how best to harness her potential, knowing that she could redefine standards for the academy if guided appropriately. For her part, remained unaware of most of these discussions, focused instead on her own growth, always seeking improvement, always preparing for the next challenge. By the end of the week, the academy had transformed. Hart was no longer merely a trainee. She was a symbol of precision, composure, and disciplined mastery. Her 30-second performance had created ripples far beyond the simulation room, reshaping perceptions, altering expectations, and challenging everyone, instructors and peers alike, to reassess what was possible. Herself understood that this was only the beginning. Mastery was a journey, not a destination, and the true test lay not in a single legendary performance, but in her ability to continue evolving, adapting, and surpassing every expectation placed upon her. As night fell, sat quietly in her quarters, reviewing every lesson, every movement, every calculated decision from the 30-second run. She understood that the real challenge was not just to impress or dominate, but to maintain focus, to refine skill, and to prepare for the unknown. The awe she had inspired in others was a byproduct, not the goal. And as she prepared for another day of rigorous training, Hart's mind was already moving ahead, anticipating the next challenge, ready to transform underestimation into unstoppable action once more. The sun rose over the Tactical Response Academy, painting the training grounds in pale gold. The air was crisp but heavy with expectation. Hart stepped onto the grounds as she always did, boots laced, posture straight, eyes steady. Yet today was different. Everything had changed. She was no longer the recruit who had arrived quietly, underestimated and dismissed. Today, she was a force, acknowledged quietly but unmistakably by every eye that watched her move. Instructors and trainees alike had adjusted their perceptions. 30-second elimination run had done more than earn admiration. It had shifted the very atmosphere of the academy. Where once doubt had followed her like a shadow, now there was a palpable respect. Even the most arrogant trainees who had laughed at her had learned a silent, humbling lesson. Skill, focus, and preparation could not be mocked. Moved among her peers with the same calm composure, aware of their changed demeanor but unaffected by it. She had learned long ago that recognition was a byproduct, not a goal. That day, a series of advanced simulations was scheduled, drills designed to test the coordination, strategy, and adaptability of the trainees under extreme pressure. Many expected to dominate once again, but she approached the challenges with quiet pragmatism rather than spectacle. Her movements were precise, her decisions calculated. Instructors watched with keen interest, noting her ability to maintain composure under fatigue and pressure. Every observation confirmed what had become increasingly clear. Hart was extraordinary, not by accident, but by relentless discipline and preparation. During a particularly grueling tactical exercise, his team was tasked with navigating a complex scenario involving multiple obstacles, unpredictable threats, and strict time constraints. Some trainees struggled, hesitated, and faltered. However, anticipated every shift, every move of her opponents, coordinating seamlessly with her teammates. She led silently, her actions guiding the team toward success without overt direction. By the end of the exercise, instructors evaluated the team's performance as exemplary, and its influence had been the critical factor in their flawless execution. Word of her skill spread not only through the academy but into informal circles beyond it. Other trainees, who once dismissed her as inexperienced or weak, began seeking guidance, observing her closely, and adjusting their own approaches based on her example. Offered instruction sparingly, teaching only when necessary, but her quiet leadership was becoming unmistakable. Where once laughter had accompanied her presence, now her name elicited attention, respect, and for some, cautious reverence. She had become both a benchmark and a challenge. The instructors themselves recognized her as a standout talent. During a private debrief, head instructor spoke with a few of the senior trainers. Hart's performance is unlike anything we've seen. Her precision, focus, and adaptability are beyond her years and experience. She's not just a model trainee, she's a potential leader, a paradigm shift for the academy. They discussed ways to refine her abilities, challenge her further, and prepare her for increasingly complex simulations. For such discussions were irrelevant to her immediate goals. She trained for mastery, not accolades, but awareness of her growing reputation reinforced her understanding that her journey was only beginning. Social dynamics at the academy continued to evolve. Former detractors now approached cautiously, seeking either alliance or understanding. Some attempted flattery, hoping to align themselves with her success. Accepted none of it, maintaining boundaries and demonstrating respect only through her actions. She understood that true influence came from consistency, capability, and integrity, not from superficial gestures. Her calm and unwavering focus became a lesson in itself. Mastery commands respect without need for self-promotion. Even the psychological impact of her legendary 30-second performance lingered in subtle ways. Trainees who once believed physical size or bravado would guarantee superiority were now forced to reassess their approach. Hart had demonstrated that anticipation, precision, and mental control outweighed arrogance and raw strength. Observers noted how her presence alone changed the dynamics of group exercises. She was a catalyst, forcing teammates and opponents alike to raise their own performance levels. In her private quarters that evening, reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. Every challenge, every moment of doubt, every insult and whispered mockery had been a stepping stone. Her mother's lessons, the insistence on patience, focus, and strategic thought, had provided the foundation upon which she had built her success. Understood that her triumph was not merely a product of skill, but a testament to resilience, mental discipline, and preparation. Every moment of underestimation she had faced had been a chance to sharpen herself. The academy had become a different place because of her. Trainees now approached challenges with renewed seriousness, instructors pushed standards higher, and the culture of the institution subtly shifted toward precision, discipline, and respect for true mastery. Herself remained grounded, aware that every accomplishment was transient and every success a prelude to a greater test. She did not dwell on admiration or reputation. She prepared, focused, and honed her skills relentlessly. Her journey was defined not by recognition, but by her commitment to excellence. 1 week later, a new challenge was announced, one of the most demanding the academy had ever devised. Trainees were nervous, anticipating failure, overthinking strategy, and fearing judgment. As always, approached it with calm analysis. Her mind mapped the scenario, her body prepared for precise execution. The lessons of the 30-second elimination run, the hours of preparation, and the focus honed through years of training converged once more. Hart was ready. And everyone knew, silently but undeniably, that she would not just participate, she would excel. As she entered the simulation room that day, a quiet confidence radiated from her presence. Her peers watched with a mixture of admiration, caution, and anticipation. The instructors, too, recognized the inevitability of her success. Calm focus, honed by experience and reinforced by repeated triumphs, made her presence a stabilizing yet formidable force. Every motion, every decision, every pivot she executed was deliberate, precise, and decisive. She no longer needed to prove herself. Her actions spoke louder than any words or expectations. By the end of the exercise, had once again demonstrated mastery beyond the comprehension of her peers. She moved seamlessly through obstacles, neutralized threats with calculated precision, and maintained composure under intense pressure. Observers were awestruck, peers humbled, and instructors quietly impressed. Hart had her reputation not merely as a skilled trainee, but as a phenomenon within the academy, a living example of discipline, anticipation, and controlled power. That evening, as she packed her gear and reflected on the day, understood the truth she had carried from the beginning. Underestimation was a tool, mastery was a responsibility, and focus was her weapon. The world had learned not to doubt her, but knew that the true challenge was to continue evolving, refining, and excelling, quietly, deliberately, and relentlessly. She had transformed ridicule into triumph, doubt into recognition, and anticipation into action. And from this day forward, anyone who underestimated Hart would do so at their own peril. With the sun setting behind the academy, casting long shadows over the training grounds, walked with quiet purpose. Every observer, every peer, and every instructor now knew the undeniable truth. She was no longer just a trainee, she was a force, disciplined, precise, and unstoppable. And as the wind brushed against her face, Hart allowed herself a brief, satisfied smile. She had proven not only her skill but her potential. They had laughed at her once. They would never do so again.